So for listeners who maybe haven't heard about Vedic astrology, can you just give us a quick, what is Vedic astrology?
Yeah, Vedic astrology is a system of astrology that originated in ancient India, and it's based on the idea that...
So let's say someone has Saturn in the first house. What does that even mean?
So the first house in Vedic astrology represents your core self. Your personality, your physical appearance. That's the idea.
Okay.
And that kind of brings us to this whole concept of late success that often gets associated with Saturn in the first house. Even if someone with Saturn in the first house does achieve something noteworthy later in life, chances are...
The article really stressed that, didn't it?
It did. And I think it's especially relevant for someone with Saturn in the first house. This placement is not about instant gratification.
Right.
It's about understanding that real growth...
All right. Ready to dive into some Vedic astrology.
Always.
Today, we're going to be looking at Saturn in the first house.
Okay.
And this deep dive is going to be based on an article from Vedic-Astro.
Cool.
So, have you ever heard of Saturn in the first house?
Yeah, for sure.
What comes to mind when you hear that?
Oh, well, I know it has a reputation, right, for being a tough placement, Saturn in the first house. But I think it can be a really powerful placement too.
Okay.
In a lot of ways. So I'm excited to get into it.
Okay, awesome. So for listeners who maybe haven't heard about Vedic astrology, can you just give us a quick, what is Vedic astrology?
Yeah, Vedic astrology is a system of astrology that originated in ancient India. And it's based on the idea that the positions of the planets at the time of your birth can give us insight into all kinds of things like your personality, your life path, even your karmic patterns.
Karmic patterns? What's that?
Yeah. It's not about a predetermined fate.
Okay.
But it's more about understanding the energies that you were born with.
Gotcha.
The potential challenges and the strengths that are kind of woven into your astrological blueprint.
I like that, the astrological blueprint. So where does Saturn fit into all of this?
So Saturn is often called the taskmaster of the zodiac.
Oh.
In the Vedic astrology.
The taskmaster.
Taskmaster, yeah.
I can see that.
It's associated with discipline, responsibility, and hard work.
Okay.
And it's the planet that pushes us to learn through experience, to build resilience, and to develop a strong sense of self-reliance.
Okay, so this is not the planet of instant gratification.
Yeah, not really, no.
Okay.
Saturn is all about the long game, the slow and steady climb towards lasting achievements.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
So, let's say someone has Saturn in the first house. What does that even mean?
So the first house in Vedic astrology represents your core self. Your personality, your physical appearance, how you approach life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Big stuff.
Big stuff, your initial reactions to the world.
Okay.
Just kind of who you are at your core.
So if you have Saturn in the first house, it's like having this cosmic taskmaster.
Right.
Right there at your foundation of your being.
Exactly, yeah.
Shaping your sense of self.
Yeah, it's like having that energy really infused into your core.
So how does that manifest? What do we see?
Well, one thing that the article highlights is that people with this placement often experience challenges early on in life.
Okay.
They might feel a bit isolated, misunderstood, or they have to work harder than others to kind of prove themselves.
So it can be tough, this placement.
Yeah, it can be, because Saturn is about, long-term growth through effort. So it's, I like to think of it it's like having a strict but ultimately loving coach who's pushing you to develop your inner strength from a young age.
Okay.
And it's, it's less about making things easy.
Right.
And more about preparing you for the long haul.
So these early challenges, they're kind of setting the stage for something bigger.
That's the idea.
Okay.
And, that kind of brings us to this whole concept of late success that often gets associated with Saturn in the first house.
Right.
But I think it's a bit more nuanced than that.
Yeah, the article seemed to push back on that idea, right? Like, it's not necessarily about waiting until you're 60 to finally achieve something.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not about being, doomed to struggle and then suddenly finding success in your later years. It's more about understanding that Saturn's rewards often come through consistent effort and a willingness to learn from your experiences.
So it's less about the timing of the success and more about the kind of success
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
that it fosters.
It's about the quality of the success and the way that you achieve it.
Gotcha.
It's like with Saturn here, success is built from the ground up. It's not about shortcuts or overnight fame.
Okay.
It's about developing inner strength, resilience, and a work ethic that will serve you well throughout your life.
So it's more like, even if someone with Saturn in the first house doesn't become, a CEO or something, until later in life.
Right.
They're still developing all these like really valuable qualities along the way.
Yeah, you're building that foundation
that are going to set them up for like long-term fulfillment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And those qualities like self-discipline and the ability to persevere through challenges.
Right.
Those are things that no one can take away from you. They
Yeah.
become part of your character, like your core foundation.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting though. That whole late success thing could actually be a bit misleading. Because think about it. Even if someone with Saturn in the first house
Right.
does achieve something noteworthy later in life, chances are they were laying the groundwork for that success for years, even decades.
Yeah.
It's just that the outward recognition might come later.
It's like they've been building this like incredible internal structure.
Yeah.
And then at some point, the external world kind of catches up.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, wow.
Exactly.
Look what you've created.
And I think that speaks to something else
the
article touches on, which is the importance of defining success on your own terms. Saturn in the first house isn't necessarily about conforming to societal expectations of what success should look like.
So it's less about chasing fame or fortune.
Right.
And more about pursuing a path that feels authentic and meaningful to you.
Exactly.
Even if it takes longer or looks different from what other people might expect.
Right. For someone with this placement, true success might be about mastering a craft, building a business from scratch, or even just developing a deep sense of inner peace and self-awareness.
Wow.
It's about aligning your actions with your values and creating a life that feels truly fulfilling on a personal level.
I'm starting to see how this placement, even with its challenges, can actually be quite empowering.
Right.
It's like Saturn is saying, hey, I'm going to make you work for it. But in the process, you're going to discover what truly matters to you.
Exactly.
And build a life that reflects that.
And that sense of self-awareness can also extend to relationships.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. The article briefly mentioned this, and I think it's worth exploring further.
Yeah, it did say something about how Saturn in the first house can influence the types of relationships you form.
Yeah.
How so?
Well, because these individuals often have such a strong sense of self and a deep understanding of their own values.
Right.
They tend to be drawn to authenticity and depth in their connections with others.
Makes sense.
They might not have a huge circle of friends.
Right.
But the relationships they do form tend to be very meaningful and long-lasting.
So they're probably not the type to collect a bunch of superficial acquaintances.
Exactly.
They're more interested in like forging these bonds that are built on mutual respect and trust.
Yes.
And a shared sense of purpose.
Precisely. And while they might not always be the most outwardly expressive people, they tend to be incredibly loyal and dependable friends. They're the ones you can always count on.
The ones who show up when it really matters.
It's interesting because we often associate Saturn with isolation or loneliness. But it seems like with this placement, it can actually foster a different kind of connection. One that's based on a deep understanding of oneself and a desire for genuine, soulful interactions with others.
That's a great observation.
Thanks.
And I think that speaks to Saturn's ability to refine and clarify. It's like it strips strips away the superficial layers
Right.
so that you can connect with others
Okay.
on a more authentic level.
It reminds me of that quote
Oh, yeah.
by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. What is essential is invisible to the eye.
Yes.
It's like Saturn in the first house
Mm-hmm.
is helping you to see beyond the surface
Yeah.
and connect with the essence of,
Right.
of who you are and who others are.
Beautifully put. And speaking of seeing beyond the surface,
Yes.
one thing that really struck me in the article.
Was the emphasis on karma.
Yes.
Yeah.
You mentioned karma earlier.
I did.
Can you explain what that means
Yeah.
in the context of Vedic astrology?
So in Vedic astrology, karma is the principle
Oh.
of cause and effect.
Mm-hmm.
It's the idea that our actions, both in this life and in past lives,
Okay.
create ripples that shape our experiences.
So it's not about some cosmic punishment system, but rather about understanding how our choices and actions
Contribute to the unfolding of our lives.
exactly.
And with Saturn in the first house,
Okay.
there's this awareness that the efforts we make to build ourselves up,
Okay.
to develop those Saturnian qualities
Mhm.
of resilience and discipline,
Right.
have ripple effects that extend beyond our own personal sphere.
So it's like our individual journey of self-mastery is somehow connected
Yeah.
to the larger tapestry of human experience.
That's the idea. It suggests that by working on ourselves, by striving to become more conscious and responsible individuals, we're actually contributing to something bigger than ourselves.
Okay.
We're weaving our threads
Yeah.
into the collective story of humanity.
That's quite a profound thought.
It is.
It makes you realize that even those early challenges, those periods of feeling isolated or misunderstood,
Yeah.
might actually be opportunities to develop qualities that can benefit not only ourselves,
Right.
but also those around us.
Exactly. It's a reminder that we're all interconnected and that our individual journeys of growth
Yeah.
are somehow woven together.
And that brings us back to something we were talking about earlier, the importance of patience.
Yes.
The article really stressed that, didn't it?
It did, and I think it's especially relevant for someone with Saturn in the first house. This placement is not about instant gratification.
Right.
It's about understanding that real growth takes time, consistent effort, and a willingness to embrace the entire journey,
Right.
even the bumpy parts.
It's so easy to get caught up
It is.
in comparing ourselves to others, especially in today's world,
Yeah.
where everything feels so fast-paced.
Right.
But with Saturn in the first house, it seems like the message is slow down, trust the process,
Exactly.
and focus on your own unique path.
It really is.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And remembering that those perceived delays or setbacks,
Yeah.
they're not failures.
Okay.
They're opportunities to learn,
Right.
to refine your approach, to build resilience that will serve you well in the long run.
It's almost like Saturn saying, look, I know you want to get there fast,
Right.
but trust me, taking the scenic route
Yeah,
will make you so much stronger and more capable.
exactly. And that resilience, that ability to bounce back from challenges
Yeah.
is something that will benefit you in all areas of life,
Okay.
not just your career. Right.
Or your outward achievements.
It's like building those core muscles that support your overall well-being.
Right.
No matter what life throws your way.
That's a great analogy.
Thanks.
And speaking of analogies,
Okay.
when we were talking about success earlier, it reminded me
Yeah.
of how different trees grow
Okay.
at different paces.
Right.
Some shoot up quickly, while others take their time to establish deep roots.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
And in the end,
Yeah.
both types of trees can be strong and beautiful in their own way.
Exactly.
It's not about who gets there first,
Right.
but about developing in a way
Yeah.
that's aligned with your own nature.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that brings us back
Okay.
to one of the key takeaways from this whole deep dive into Saturn in the first house.
Okay.
It's a placement that encourages you to define success on your own terms.
Right.
And to embrace the journey.
Knowing that the real rewards come from the growth and self-discovery that happen along the way.
It's like Saturn is handing you a chisel and a block of marble
Ooh.
and saying, all right, let's see what you can create.
Right.
It might take some time, it might require some sweat and effort, but the masterpiece will be uniquely yours.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Thanks.
It's about becoming the sculptor of your own life,
Wow.
shaping your character, honing your skills, and building something that reflects your deepest values and aspirations.
This has been such an eye-opening exploration.
It has.
I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective
Yeah.
on Saturn in the first house. It's not just about limitations and delays.
Right.
It's about developing a deep sense of self-awareness, resilience, and an unwavering commitment to your own growth.
It's been a pleasure diving into this with you.
Likewise.
And remember, while Vedic astrology can offer valuable insights, it's ultimately up to each of us to decide how we want to use that information to create our own unique paths.
So to our listener, I hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought.
Definitely.
Maybe it's even inspired you
Yeah.
to embrace those Saturnian challenges with a bit more courage
Yeah.
and a lot more patience.
Remember, growth often happens outside of our comfort zones.
So true.
So keep exploring, keep learning, and keep trusting the process.
Now, as we wrap things up, here's one final thought to ponder.
Okay.
If Saturn in the first house is about mastering ourselves, what's one area of your life where you could practice cultivating that Saturnian resilience? What's one small step you could take today to build that inner strength and self-awareness?
It's a question worth reflecting on.
Absolutely. Until next time, happy exploring.
Happy exploring.